Good morning, everyone. This is Jim Giacchetta. I'm the CTO and co-founder of VidOvation. We're a video distribution contribution company. We specialize in wireless, bonded cellular, IPTV, fiber optics, amongst other things. Today, we're going to talk about the Live PD TV show. Hopefully most of you have heard of it. It's the #1 show on cable for the better part of the last 2 years. Live PD, it's like the show Cops, except it's live. And today we're going to talk about some of the challenges and hurdles that needed to be overcome to make this show possible. And that's a perfect segue into the title of today's webinar. How Live PD became the top OTT video on demand DVR show in 2018. The show has won all kinds of statistical awards. Believe it or not, it's the #1 live cable TV show, but it's also the #1 DVR'd show. So I think people, if they don't catch it live, they don't want to miss it, so they make sure they DVR it. And then it broke all the records in video on demand. So if you didn't DVR it and you didn't watch it live, they would go into the A&E library and watch the show that way. And then over the top it's the #1 streamed show. OTT refers to streaming. So maybe I'll start with a question. A lot of what we do here at VidOvation centers around live television, live production, whether that be news or sports or like this live reality show, Live PD. And just curious, how many of you guys and men and women out there, how many of you are doing a live production right now, some sort of live broadcast, whether it be news or sports. We're even doing a lot of high school sports, second, third tier college sports, university sports, high school sports. So there's more and more demand, more and more demand for live content, and that fits right into our wheelhouse very nicely. Let me see here. I think I can show you guys the results. No, maybe not. I don't. Well, I'll just tell it to you. So basically, 71% of you said that you do some sort of a live production, and 27% of you do not. Maybe when we're done, maybe we can help you. Those 25% of you guys that are not doing something live, we can help you with that if you have aspirations for that. So let me. I think I need to close that. Yeah. You should be able to see my screen now. So what was the challenge? So we were approached by the technical director at Big Fish Entertainment. Big Fish Entertainment is the production company that produces the Live PD show for A&E. And it was quite a daunting challenge. Basically, in the beginning, they wanted to do 6 or 7 different cities simultaneously. Now they'll do like 7 or 8 simultaneous. And in each of those cities, there's 4 cameras in each police vehicle in close proximity. So those 4 cameras need to be in perfect gen lock and have perfect audio lip sync. Otherwise, the show wouldn't be watchable. It'd be like, you're under arrest, you're under arrest, as they cut to different shots, a tight shot, a wide shot. Then it gets even more complicated. In some cities, they have more than 1 police vehicle. In a lot of cities now, they have 2 police vehicles. And there's a tendency where the 2 vehicles with Live PD cameras, if it's a real juicy arrest, if there's something juicy happening or the cop needs backup, they'll send the second car, and now you have 8 cameras all in close proximity. So in a live show, if this was a recorded show, a produced show, you could fix a lot of things in post-production. You could fix lip sync problems. You could kill. Of course, you would synchronize all your video clips together, all your different different shots. So there's a lot you could do in post, but in a live show, there's no time for that. So the producers of the show, Big Fish, needed a system that could do rock solid gen lock, provide rock solid lip sync over cellular, which is not so easy to do. Inside of our networks, the old school approach is distributing black burst. Now with SMPTE 2110, synchronization is built into the fabric, but SMPTE 2110 can't go over an unmanaged network, can't go over a cellular network. It's just networks are not built for that. So Big Fish and A&E really had nowhere to go. And when they came to VidOvation, we had a technology from a company by the name of AVIWEST, where they had done a similar multi-camera live show in Europe, and we did some initial testing, and we were off to the races. The technology made the show possible. So let me just dive into it a little bit. So some of you might be familiar with the show, so this might be a little redundant, but if you've seen the show, or if you haven't, there's basically two photographers that sit in the back seat, two photogs. They use a small camera from Canon. It's really a nice camera. It's broadcast quality, but small. It does have infrared capability because some of these situations are at night in the dark. But inside the police vehicle, they have a medium shot of the driver, a POV shot, basically below the rear view mirror, and then they have a shot going out the front dash. These cameras are good. They're Marshall cameras, but sometimes they want a camera with a better lens, better optics. So sometimes the photog sits in the front seat instead of sitting in the back. There's two of them in the back, so maybe one will ride shotgun. There's some pictures I'll show you where he'll sit up front just because he's got a better lens, better optics. So to get a variety of shots on the show. Then basically, so two photogs sit in the back seat, and bonded cellular, AVIWEST was one of the first to put bonded cellular on the camera. So you can see here, if you so choose, the unit would go between the battery plate on the camera and the Anton Bauer V-Lock battery. It would sandwich between the batteries, and they were the first to do this 6 years ago with a bonded product. Sandwiching between the camera is popular, has been popular for the last 20 years or more with fiber optics or with more microwave type wireless. So AVIWEST 6 years ago said, hey, let's do it that way. That's a better way to package it. The other alternative is to wear it in a backpack. Well, live PD, because they're getting in and out of a vehicle, they didn't want a backpack on their back. They'd get hung up on the door jamb getting in and out of the car, or they couldn't sit very well. So these guys are dressed for battle. They're wearing a bulletproof vest. So there's a little pocket on the belly of the bulletproof vest where they tuck the bonded cellular AVIWEST Pro 180, and so they can sit. So it's on their belly. Just works out better for them that way. And then in the rear of the vehicle, or in the trunk, are two of the fixed AVIWEST units there. Those are the ones that are the two Marshall cameras are feeding the two units in the trunk. So you can see here they put a big battery. They just put a big UPS battery that will run for a couple hours in the trunk, so they don't have to steal power from the police vehicle. The police vehicles have all kinds of radios. They don't want to put an unnecessary load on the alternator, so just put a big hunkin' battery in the trunk to power all the transmission gear. Also, I should say, inside the cab of the police vehicle are some ambient mics, and those feed into the analog inputs on the bonded cellular units in the trunk. And then, of course, the photogs have microphones on their cameras that feed into the AVIWEST that way. So here you can see the units. They're hidden in a little case in the trunk. You can see here, these up atop here are probably like wireless lav receivers, lavalier mics that the police officers wear. So that's coming into the unit, as well as the ambient mics inside the police vehicle cab. And they have a little audio mixer, and then the audio inputs are going to the analog audio inputs on the AVIWEST. Then you see in this photo, there's a little RF connector. Here are two connectors that plug into the AVIWEST for external antennas. A common question I get all the time is like, hey, won't the unit work better if I use the external antennas? Why don't I just use them all the time? You really don't need them. The AVIWEST unit inside the top and bottom of the housing right here, top and bottom are 4 cellular antennas, 4 on the top, 4 on the bottom. On top is also Wi-Fi and GPS. These work great as long as you're outside of a vehicle or outdoors. The only time you really need the quad antennas is if you're in a vehicle. Believe it or not, of course, the body of the vehicle shields the cellular signal. You know, there's 2 AVIWEST units in the trunk of this police vehicle. It's like a Faraday cage. You're not going to get much signal out of there. It's not going to work very well. So it's like a ribbon cable that comes off these antennas. So AVIWEST makes 2 types of antennas. The ones used by Live PD, they're passive. So it just outboards the internal antennas to external antennas, and they're high gain passive antennas. And there's a very strong magnet they mount to the roof here of the police vehicle. So here they just put them in the trunk, put them on top of the trunk of the vehicle, and it's a flat ribbon cable that just goes through the through the molding on the trunk, so it doesn't impede the trunk. Trunk closes fine, and it's still waterproof, etc. Somebody made a joke once on our website. It's like, hey, were the cops eating Chinese food? That they thought these looked like Chinese food takeout boxes. I thought that was pretty funny. But these are actually the antennas. And why are there 4 of them? They're quad antennas, and the AVIWEST unit has 8 cellular modems. So 4 times 2 makes 8. So you need 2 of them per unit. So there's 2 transmitters in here, hence the 8 quad antennas. AVIWEST does make an active antenna where there's 4 modems in there, and that can be used with their HEVC rack-mounted encoder as an option, the active version of the quad. So here's some cool shots. You can see here, this guy looks like he's not wearing his bulletproof vest, but you can see here some of them have vests on. Here's a photog. You see, here's the Marshall camera pointing out the front. Somewhere in here is a camera pointing at the driver, but the photog, he decided to sit up front maybe to get a better shot. He's got a bigger piece of glass on that camera compared to the Marshalls. The Marshalls do a good job, but you could understand why maybe they would want an alternate shot with the bigger camera. And you can see here, somewhere on his belly, he's got the battery and the AVIWEST transmitter on his belly. He's got his bulletproof vest. There's you can see here, like here's 2 photogs, and it looks like two either line producers or technicians with the photogs out in the field. The tech, he'll be helping them swap out their batteries. The line producers in communication with master control. Once in a while, Dan Abrams will throw to one of the line producers, like if there's something going on and it's not clear what's happening, they'll go, hey Becky, what's happening there in Tulsa? What's the situation? So once in a while, the line producer will speak, but more off camera. They don't get on camera, so they're able to do that with the AVIWEST. Then this is the master control side. So in the A&E master control in New York, there's 9 AVIWEST receivers, and AVIWEST calls their receiver a stream hub. It's not only a receiver, it's a receiver, it's a decoder, it's also a transcoder. and an encoder. So it is very common for a lot of our customers to use the AVIWEST Stream Hub receiver to output IP to social media, to other affiliates. The Stream Hubs can speak to each other through the public internet very reliably. You know, they have. I'll get into it more, but I'll give you a little foreshadowing to the AVIWEST has what they call safe streams, and it's a extremely robust, proprietary, patented transport mechanism for video, and it's how they communicate. It's how the pro transmitters communicate to the Stream Hub receivers. It's how the Stream Hub receivers all communicate with each other. It's all very rock solid. So there's 9 of these receivers, and Big Fish was very clever in that they have 3 different internet service providers. So they have 3 cities on one service provider, so that you got the 9 cities. So they have a 3-way diversity. So if the internet should go out with one of these service providers, they'd only lose 3 cities, not everything. So it's very clever that they have redundancy that way, and the AVIWEST product facilitated that. You know, so what do they do with these live videos that are coming in? So they first dump it into an instant replay system, you know, an EVS or something similar to that. And they have line producers watching the live feeds as they come in, and they make an initial pass at metadata, you know, certain keywords, you know, is there a gun, or are there drugs, or and you know, minor things are in green, some things of interest might be yellow, and then something really juicy is in red. And so there's operators at I think I have a picture of it actually. Let me get to the next slide. Here we go. Yeah, so you see here these are 4 different cities coming in, or 4 different police vehicles. So you see the 4 cameras. These are different police vehicles, and then these 4 operators here are keying in metadata from what they see on the screen above, and then of course they're on the comms. Then there's a line producer further downstream who is also watching, and if he sees a lot of red coming in on a camera feed, wow, that's great. There's something juicy happening there. You know, they'll alert the director, say, okay, we got shots fired in Tulsa. You know, they'll alert the director, and the director will say, you know, hey, when we're done with the current segment, you know, load that up. So they put it in front of the director. They'll put it together in a package, you know, all the cameras associated with that. So now it's a few minutes old. So you know, it's just part of the process. You know, we're not dumping everything to air. There's as many as 41 cameras. So it's a few minutes before it actually gets QC'd. They put the metadata. Then they'll tell the director, boom. And then the director will cue them. Okay, when we're done with this clip, put the package up, and we'll go to Tulsa. Or they'll go when the current clip is done. We'll go to commercial. Let Abrams, the talent, know when we come back from commercial, we're going to go to Tulsa. So everyone's all on the comms. So while they're in commercial, they'll tell Abrams, okay, you know, we have shots fired in Tulsa. Then they put the package up. And then the director here, Johnny Gonzalez, is sitting in the middle. I think this is a producer next to him. And then here's the technical director. So they'll put the package up when they come out of commercial, say, folks, shots fired in Tulsa. And then the director goes, okay, take camera 1, take camera 2. And he takes cameras like it's live now, but they're playing it back to him out of the instant replay system. So here's some other stations. You can see the studio. This is a quality control station where they have all the cameras up. You know, it's a live show, and you know, they want to having at least 2 photogs with each police vehicle. You know, they try to time it where they don't have to do a battery change at the same time. So if something juicy happens, unfortunately, they have to take system down for a minute or so to swap batteries. They don't have the photogs don't have 2 batteries on their person where they could do a failover. But that seems to work. You know, if somebody needs to change batteries and the other photog keeps going, and they manage to stay on the air that way. Here's a quote from Dan Cesario, the founder and president of Big Fish Entertainment. You know, he was very pleased with the service and support that we've given them. The show was in jeopardy. Basically, they approached us a month before the show was going to air, and you know, hey, we need a solution. And you know, I talked to their technical consultant. And I said, you know, theoretically, I think we have what you need. We do gen lock. You know, but we sent them a demo quickly, and they saw that the AVIWEST system worked. And you know, we did a few dress rehearsals, and the show went, you know, pretty much even the premiere. You know, there was a learning curve, learning the equipment. You know, Big Fish had to learn the workflow of this crazy type of a show. But now it's been the better part of 2 years. They're the #1 show. It's been a lot of fun. Let me ask you guys another question. So this particular show, I'm going to get more into some of the technical stuff. I'm also going to talk about a project we did with AVIWEST with Turner Sports for the Ryder Cup. That's coming up next. So we're going to kind of shift away from bonded cellular. So this show uses bonded cellular, and I'm just curious how many of you guys are currently using bonded cellular right now. Is that something you guys are using, or something you plan to use in the future? Yeah, just give me a yes or no. Even if you're going to use it in the future, you know, just say no for now. Yeah, so it looks pretty good. I don't know if you guys see the results, but I'll just read them to you. So 29% of you are already using some form of bonded, and oh, it's changing now. It's moving on me. 37% are using it, yes, and 63% are not using bonded. If you folks that are not using bonded and you have aspirations to do live, we'd love to help you. We'd love to help all of you with any of your live production needs. So here, oh, I gotta end. Wait, I gotta end the poll. Hold on a second. Okay. So you know, so what was the result of in summary this live PD show? You know, on a given, the show is typically on Friday and Saturday nights. It's very draining on the photogs. They really don't go home to their families. They just stay on site. So I think they do like a 6 to 8 week stint, and then they take a couple of week hiatus. So it's a very demanding show on the field personnel, and so on a given night there'd be upwards of 36 and sometimes even close to 41 live camera feeds, and everything's in perfect lip sync. You know, it really is irrelevant whether they're shooting in New York or somewhere on the East Coast, or whether they're shooting in Arizona or California. The show is, you know, the gear can be 3,000 miles apart. We've done some projects with some of the European broadcasters that use AVIWEST, where they'll do a multi-camera shoot of the red carpet for the Oscars or the you know, the Academy Awards, and send it live back to Sweden or Norway or wherever, you know, with as little with less than a second latency. But the real challenge was maintaining that multi-camera synchronization. It's what some folks refer to as REMI, remote integration, or at-home production, whatever you might call that type of production, that, you know, where you don't have the production truck in the field, where you bring everything home. We're seeing more and more of that. You know, I talked to guys at NEP or Game Creek, and you know, some of our marketing says, you know, the truck is going to go away. I don't think that trucks are going to go away completely. I think the trucks will always be needed to some extent. You know, eventually we'll probably be doing camera shading across the network. I think there's been some applications, more of on a managed network controlling iris of cameras. But you're still going to need photogs there on site. You're going to need some equipment on site. I suspect, NEP, your Game Creeks, and your other players out there, in the future they may actually have more trucks, but they'll be smaller trucks, and they'll be doing a wider diversity of shows and live productions than only your Monday Night Football or your hockey or baseball games. Those big ticket events that we're going to see some smaller stuff. So I don't want to turn this into a commercial, but here's some slides. I'll kind of go through this quickly. This is the unit. We actually, AVIWEST, this big fish is looking to upgrade. They're using the AVIWEST older unit. The new unit will have HEVC, but all of AVIWEST units have 8 internal modems, high gain antennas, 2 LAN connections, Wi-Fi, Anton Bauer V-Lock. They were one of the first to go on camera. Here's a TV2 Denmark crew in Times Square using the AVIWEST. The talent is untethered. The IFB and intercom is going through the unit. AVIWEST is very strong on the intercom elements of the system. US operators are loving the AVIWEST as well. Then the Stream Hub, you can have up to 16 receiver, 16 transmitters, 16 pros received by a single receiver. In news, it's more of a round robin. You might have 50 units out there, but they don't all go live at the same time. So it's more of many inputs and a few outputs. When it's live, typically we have 4 SDI outputs. So in the case of live PD, they only have 4 inputs and 4 outputs. Now, if they had an IP master control, we could do actually 16 inputs, 16 pros or 16 receives in one RU, which is very powerful. And then the box also outputs IP, RTMP, RTSP, HLS, and a generic transport stream, as well as the proprietary AVIWEST safe stream. So you might be using some of the other bonded cellular gear out there where you make like a grid and you hook all your affiliates together. This is the technology you would use from AVIWEST to do the same thing. And that kind of segues into the Riders Cup. Again, AVIWEST has a cloud manager. They have a multi-viewer function. So if you want to quality control, like live PD, they have these 41 feeds coming in. You could designate one of the SDI or IP outputs as a multi-viewer output and put that up on a big display for quality control or for the transmission engineer to keep an eye on everything. So there's some cool new features in the AVIWEST system that can help with your live transmission and your live workload. So now we'll segue into a project we did with Turner Sports for the Riders Cup. Bob Baker and Tom Sahara brought VidOvation into Turner, and Chris Brown was heavily involved in the project. Chris Brown has been kind of the face of this particular project, particularly with the Sports Video Group. I think Sports Video Group had a function this week in Arizona. Chris Brown's there speaking about what Turner Sports did with the Ryder Cup, and of course he spoke at Sports Video Group in December, along with some other panel members, some of his sports colleagues from other networks. So what was the challenge for Turner? The big challenge was, they weren't the primary rights holder, so their revenue stream or their advertising revenue stream was not as big as the primary rights holder. So they had a more finite budget for their production. They still wanted good quality. They still wanted to do a good show. So they were already looking at some of the AVIWEST stuff, and they were demoing some of our stuff, and like, hey guys, here's a crazy question. We talked about a single feed here, a single feed there. Can you do 16 feeds, 16 ISO camera feeds from Paris to Atlanta through the public internet? Can you do 4 return program feeds from Atlanta back to Paris? It's a live show. We don't want to be putting frame syncs and fixing lip sync problems. When it gets to Atlanta, we want to dump it live to air, live to social media. So again, this is more of the rack-mounted platform of AVIWEST, called the HE4000. These are the units here. They're half a rack wide. There's a rack mount to put 2 of them in a rack. It's relatively portable. In the case of Turner, they put in their flyaway kit. Now this device has 2 LAN connections, so you could have 2 internet service providers, 2 telecom providers. It also has 2 USB ports, which can optionally connect to what AVIWEST calls the quad cell link, and the quad cell link is that active external antenna I alluded to. So Tom Sahara and the guys at Turner are like, we like that idea. Like if we're at a basketball game, we'll show up a couple hours before the game. We'll order a Metro Ethernet circuit for our feed. But then, there's an afternoon game. We arrive Saturday morning. The feed's not turned up. We call the service provider, says, oh, we'll send somebody out on Tuesday. Excuse me, the game's in a few hours. So Tuesday's not going to work for us. So they like the idea that they could connect bonded cellular to an encoder as a backup in case the telco circuit is out. Now, in this case, the show was in Paris. They chose not to do bonded cellular as a backup. They chose to only use a single internet service provider. I probably would have slept better the first night of the show, the first day of the show, if they had 2 connections, the backup connections. If the ISP went down, everything was going through that. But everything worked flawlessly. They barely dropped a single packet. The Ryder Cup, I think, was a 4-day shoot. So they had these 16 feeds coming out of Paris. They had not only the tournament, but they had some, they follow the talent around. I'm sure they pushed some content through the circuit that wasn't live. They went out around the campus and followed some of the talent around, did interviews. But there was a live connection for the better part of 4 days, 16 feeds coming in, 4 feeds coming out, and it just worked rock solid as if they had a fiber connection. It was that good. And if you guys know Tom Sahara or Bob Baker or some of the guys over at Turner Sports or Chris Brown, they can attest to that. And then a common question we get is like, well, what's the magic? How does it work? So this is an HEVC encoder. So it helps that doesn't require as much bandwidth because it's HEVC. It's more efficient. H.265. Also, it uses AVIWEST, what they call safe streams. So what does that mean? It has AVIWEST has just rolled out their 3rd version, Safe Streams 3. It has dynamic forward error correction. So what does that mean? Forward error correction is nothing new for communication systems, whether it be satellite or microwave or ENG or encoders or IP. Forward error correction is a certain amount of overhead that's added to the stream to make it resilient to packet drops or packet loss. Without getting into the math, I have a whole nother PowerPoint presentation I've done years ago. It's on our website on more of the nuts and bolts of how FEC works. But basically, if you add a 20% overhead, let's say you set the FEC at 20%, you're adding a 20% overhead to the payload to offer redundancy. And then statistically, if you add 20% overhead, you can sustain 20% loss and automatically recover any lost packets. Well, that 20% is overhead. So say you have a 20 meg pipe and 20% is going to FEC, now that 20 meg pipe is actually 16 megs of usable video bandwidth. So what AVIWEST does is very clever. I think they're the only ones doing this. They only turn the forward error correction on if it's needed. If the link is passing all the packets, everything is going smoothly. Maybe there's a little bit of FEC turn on, just a minimal amount. If all of a sudden things start going south, the circuit is taking a hit. It drops a lot of packets. In the short term, ARQ will kick in, automatic re-request. So because the FEC is turned down, maybe we miss a few of the initial packet drops. So ARQ, the decoder runs the dance, controls the show. The decoder will tell the encoder, whoa, I just lost packets 101 through 121. Can you resend those? And it sends those through. Then in parallel, it says maybe I better bring the FEC up a little bit because things are getting funky to try to stop this barrage of packet loss. And this is how Ryder was able, through an unmanaged connection, through a public internet connection, essentially drop no packets. I mean, I think they dropped a very small number of packets for the whole event. And then if a packet should not be recoverable, the whole system doesn't fall apart. It conceals it. If a packet in the middle of green grass is suddenly dropped, you're not going to see a bright spot. It's gonna smooth it out and assume the missing packet is green. So the unit has what AVIWEST calls a concealment mode. Then another important thing is, I mean, all bonded cellular does this, but I think it's a little bit more of a foreign concept when it comes to fixed encoders. You take Fujitsu or Ericsson or Atem, something like that. For the most part, most high-end encoders are constant bit rate. Bonded cellular guys, we've all had to learn how to do adaptive bit rate because the cellular pipe was so up and down and unpredictable. Constant bit rate just didn't work. Okay, that we have a 10 megabit pipe. Let's try to send 5 megabits. Oh, but then it dips down to 3 momentarily. You'd lose the feed or the video would freeze. So with bonded, it's constantly going up and down as the cellular bandwidth changes. So AVIWEST has a lot of expertise in a variable bit rate. So Turner, when they got on site to do the Ryder Cup, they put the AVIWEST units into constant bit rate mode. They purchased a gigabit Ethernet pipe, and they said, we have no problem. We're going to run these 16 feeds at 20 megabits each. Everything is going to be fine. And in constant bit rate, it started dropping packets. Whoa, what's going on? Is something wrong with the AVIWEST units? It ended up that their gigabit Ethernet pipe, now they might have had a service level agreement from the venue in Paris to the NOC of the service provider, but I don't think they had a service level agreement of 1 gigabit per second from Paris all the way to Atlanta. And we figured this out during dress rehearsal. So, the crew was out there 48 hours before the event. So we said, look, guys, we really recommend you run the AVIWEST gear at variable bit rate. And they go, well, our Fujitsus, we normally would run them at CBR, constant bit rate. I said, well, this is a different product, and we don't know where the bandwidth ceiling is. So we switched the units over to VBR, and lo and behold, it seemed to settle out at 13 megabits per second. So the available bandwidth was far less than the gigabit Ethernet that they thought they had. So that's the beauty of variable bit rate. Here's a common question I get. A customer will tell me, I have a decent encoder, a constant bit rate encoder. Pick a brand, any brand. And then I have this cradle point router with 4 cellular modems on it, and it does some load balancing or something like a cradle point. Then I have I'm pointing that to a decoder and a master control. When the ballpark is empty, it works, but then when the ballpark is full, it doesn't work. The problem is that the decoder, it's not a closed loop. With AVIWEST, it's a closed loop. The decoder is actually controlling the dance. The decoder is checking or looking at the quality of each of the 8 cellular modem paths. The AVIWEST units can have up to 12 paths, 2 LAN, 2 Wi-Fi, 8 cellular. It looks at all 12 of those paths. If circuit number 1 starts dropping packets, it tells the encoder or the transmitter to stop sending packets down that path. Then if that path, the loss of that path affects the throughput, it tells the encoder to lower its bit rate. So that's why in the scenario I mentioned earlier, where you have different vendors encoder, we don't have control over the bit rate. No one's analyzing the quality of the cellular path or the network. That's why you need a closed system. That's why you can't build your own bonded cellular or your own bonded IP. Cellular is a piece of it, or bonded IP to be more general. And then the simple answer too is that we get asked all the time, why does the AVIWEST unit seem to work better than a lot of the other guys out there? We think it comes down to better antennas, better modems, and then the algorithm is the big thing. I think that's the big piece. How AVIWEST controls the transport stream. So I'm going to get into that in a couple of slides. I have a bad habit of jumping ahead like 3 slides ahead. So give you a little foreshadowing. So they had 4 HE4000s in Paris to give you 16 feeds, and then they had 1 HE4000 in Atlanta feeding back to Paris. And then with each HE is a companion stream hub. So a 1 RU appliance gives you the 4 outputs, and a half rack, a 1 RU half rack appliance gives you the 4 HD signals or 1 4K. Turner could have done this show in 4K if they wanted, but they did it in HD. And what Turner has told us, what some of the other major networks, there's a network in New York that has an encoder lab. I'm not at liberty to mention names, but it's a 3-letter network. There's an individual there who's really known for picking apart encoders. He says that this is the best HEVC encoder he's seen, and it's a chip-based, ASIC-based encoder, and it's the best anyone has seen. Turner, everyone's different. Like, if you're at ESPN and they put an encoder, they like to look at the crawl. Does the crawl at the bottom stutter? If you're dropping a frame, the crawl will stutter. That's a good test of an encoder. Or some sports venue customers like to a basketball moving over a sea of faces. Does everything get blurred out? With Turner, quick zooming or quick panning on grass. They're like, hey, when we do quick pan, quick zooms, we can still see the blades of grass. This AVIWEST box is really good. So then, again, similar to the live PD show, we were able to maintain gen lock and lip sync. Another big caveat was, because it was a European production show, they shot the show in 50 hertz frame rate, and the AVIWEST box has the ability to do a standards conversion inside the box. So I believe they set the output to 1080i or 720p 5994, and the show was shot, or the video came into the system at 50. So they didn't need 16 expensive standards converters on the output of the AVIWEST. I always tease my AVIWEST counterparts that I go, you guys are too modest, man. You got a lot of really sophisticated, cost-saving features in your product, and you don't brag about it enough. I guess that's my job. My job is to brag about how good the AVIWEST technology is. So I did a presentation at the SMPTE, the annual SMPTE conference in Florida. Joe Adalia had me come in and speak on precision timing protocol and a little bit about SMPTE 2110. I also did speak about the live PD and Ryder Cup, and how does AVIWEST maintain all this lip sync and gen lock, and they use a form of precision timing protocol. the benefit that AVIWEST is a closed system, they really don't need to meet any kind of an industry standard. But on their IP outputs, they do have generic transport stream out. They also have outputs for SRT. They're part of the SRT Alliance. The HE4000s will have some point in the near future. There's an SFP fiber optic port on the back of these HE4000s to take in SMPTE 2110 and then transport that, and then on the receive side give back the SMPTE 2110. So AVIWEST is forward looking in a lot of their technology. Here's some beauty shots of the event. So here's the control room in Atlanta. Here's the Ryder Cup. I think we sent Turner the rack mount brackets for the HE4000s, but you can see here it looks like they just put them on a shelf and there's like a bungee cord kind of holding them down. But these could be rack mounted, two of them side by side. So here's three of them just sitting here on the shelf. These are the boxes that got the video back to Atlanta. Then I've known Tom Sahara for years. Any of you, I'm sure you guys that know Tom, he's probably one of the smartest guys I know, but he's just so humble and soft-spoken, and he's just a pleasure of a guy to work with. Everyone at Turner. My dad started Multidyne, some 40 years ago, and when I was still involved with Multidyne, Turner was always one of our best customers. After NBC, I think CNN and Turner were the second biggest customer that helped launch Multidyne. Back in the days when Multidyne made test equipment, and it's a pleasure working with Tom Sahara and the Turner team. We briefly did a show called Border Live. A competing network was trying to kind of, I don't know, do a similar show to Live PD, maybe. I don't want to say the word copy, but I think it could have been a good show. I think the producers, the network didn't realize, hey, look, guys, it's going to take a dozen or so shows to see if we really have a show. But I just have this slide here that, here's another testament that the technology worked. If anything, it was even a more hostile environment than Live PD. We were on border towns to Mexico, and the cellular was not that great near the border. The units were actually grabbing towers in Mexico to help transport the signal, so our units can roam internationally. So for this show, we allowed the units to grab U.S. towers or Mexican towers, or a combination of both, to get a good signal. So let me get into some of the technology. So I have a habit of going on pretty long with these. We wanted to keep this under an hour. I see we got about 10 minutes left, so I'll get through some of this. So here's just a quick shot of the ecosystem. So you can see here, you have your capture devices, your encoders, your transmitters, and it could be the Pro, either mounted on the camera or in the backpack. There's rack mount versions of the Pro that are a full rack. The HE is a newer platform. That's what Turner used. This does 4 channels of HD or 1 channel of 4K. The Air is a really nice device. The Air is a very economical way to get your hands on what people are saying is the best HEVC encoder they've seen. So while the HE4000 has it's a 4-channel device, some customers are like, I don't need 4 channels. That's overkill. So if you just need 1, this Air is really nice. It's portable. A photog can wear it on his belt. There's an H.264 version and a HEVC 265 version. You can get them without any modems or with 2 internal modems, and then you can add 2 external modems via USB, the more consumer type modems, you can add that to it. So that's a nice way to get the HEVC high quality encoder economically. And then the cell phone apps. We work on Macs, iOS devices, Android devices, and Mac OS, and then other IP sources. If you the AVIWEST Stream Hub can act as a generic IRD. So if you have other encoders, an Ericsson or an ATEM out there, the AVIWEST will receive a transport stream from other devices. And then here's an overview of the networks. 3G, 4G, 5G, Wi-Fi, satellite. I mean, satellite. It's not an ugly word. I don't think satellite is going away anytime soon. We have customers that will bond the cellular with satellite, where the bonded maybe is back up to the satellite, and it just seamlessly will bond the two, or fail over to one or the other, or vice versa. Cellular is the primary, and the more expensive satellite is the backup. BGAN, LAN. You hook any kind of an IP, an internet connection to any of these devices, and if it finds the public internet, it'll sniff out that bandwidth and use it. Then for distribution, you can hit one stream hub or an infinite number of stream hubs. They can all be hooked together in a grid, in an interlocking grid. IP outputs, SDI, and HDMI inputs and outputs. Now we can get into some of the meat and potatoes. So here's the more technical stuff. And I'll try to keep track of time here. So SafeStreams 3, I mentioned that. It's AVIWEST's third generation of this very robust transport protocol. So what does it support? It supports H.265, HEVC, or 264 AVC codecs. It's a hybrid system. I kind of alluded to this before. So it dynamically adjusts the 2D forward error correction. So it turns it on, it turns it up and down when it's needed, and then that works hand in hand with the retransmission, or the ARQ, or the ACK. There's so many different acronyms for this, but you guys get the idea. The automatic re-request of packets. I lost the packet, please resend the packet. Then the system manages the priorities. So, in the grand scheme of things, what packets are more important than others? Control packets obviously are important. ARQ or ACK packets are important. So I have a diagram that shows kind of the priority of that. So managing the links, setting the priorities of the transmission, all that's the magic. I think that's the special sauce that really makes AVIWEST different. This very sophisticated, elaborate dance that's done to control the transport, to make the transport bulletproof. Then IP data bridges and router modes. Common thing is, maybe I want to use an extra AVIWEST Pro as a hotspot, and we do that all the time with our customers. And we're agnostic. We typically do 8 cellular modems across. That's what we recommend. AVIWEST was the first to do 8 modems. Some of the other players have copied them. We're firm believers of having 2 Verizon, 2 AT&T, 2 T-Mobile, and 2 Sprint. Common question we get is, why you put Sprint in there? Sprint's not that good. And I apologize for any Sprint users or employees. Just statistically, people say, Sprint is not needed. We speak contrarian to that. We see on our monthly data usage, our unit tries to flatten out the usage for diversity. So I'll give you an example. Let's say Verizon has 20 megs available on a single modem. We don't like the idea of putting the whole payload on that one connection, because as we all know, in any kind of IP communications, you're only leased that connection. The tower could decide, hey, subscriber, you're hogging the tower or you're hogging that connection. We have some congestion. They're going to dump you. Now, if you had your whole payload going through that 20 meg connection, it'd be very hard for the system to recover from that seamlessly. There would be a hit, if not, a good 60-second hit. So AVIWEST takes the approach of smoothing it out. We would rather see a meg or several megs spread across all 8 modems. So just the way the AVIWEST product works, there may be more bandwidth available statistically, but we see pretty even usage across Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. And what tells us that at least the networks are equally available. Really doesn't speak to, like, maybe Verizon had more bandwidth, but we prefer to diversify. But I look at it as availability. And then so that averages 27% to 29%, somewhere in that range. And then the leftover, Sprint handles about 14 to 16%. So we've seen, in really challenging environments. Here's another question we get. I don't believe it that the AVIWEST will work at MetLife Stadium with 80,000 fans in the stands during a football game. It's like, well, demo it. And the customer will say, I had your competitor's rig out here last Sunday. Ours just works. We get 5 megs with 80,000 fans. So, well, what's happening there? Maybe the better antennas, maybe the better modems, maybe the better algorithm. I think a piece of it too, though, is the majority of the fans are probably on AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon, and there's less competition to get onto Sprint. So in some of those bad areas, I think Sprint saves the day. So so we do need Sprint. Sprint, we feel, is an important piece of the puzzle. So, I'll go through this pretty quick. So this is more about the safe streams. It's a full duplex uplink and video return. AVIWEST, the new AVIWEST products all have video inputs and video outputs. If you buy a unit today, there's a video output. Today, the firmware just gives you a loop through. It's like a confidence out. But there will be firmware updates later this year that will give full quality video return. Particularly with the REMI production, especially some of these smaller games where they don't have an in-house crew shooting the game. So there'll be a single crew, and they're also doing replay, and they're also doing the in-house feed. So if we move the truck from the venue back to master control, we have to send a high quality feed back to the venue to put something up on the big screen, to have play highlights or replay, that sort of thing. So this return path, everyone's been asking for this, but I think as we move forward and we get into more of this REMI or at-home production, this return path is going to become even more important. Let's see here. So I mentioned this. So, what is safe streams? Why do we need it? Well, it's what gives us that resilience, that what I call the bulletproof transport over an unmanaged network. And what does that mean, an unmanaged network? Well, the public internet is an unmanaged network. Cellular, for the most part, is an unmanaged network. Things like that. Now, if somebody's running this on their internal corporate network, that would be more of a managed network. And of course, the devices will work over a managed network, but that's easy. That's easier. The unmanaged is more the Wild West. And then this, forward error correction and ARQ, and this ACK is another way. These acknowledgments of reception of packets is the special sauce, and AVIWEST is delivering a 300 millisecond glass-to-glass transport. So encoding, the transmission, and the decoding 300 milliseconds. Now, obviously, if we're going over a network that has a 600 millisecond round-trip latency, well, we'll probably have to increase the latency on our transport to 1 second. But basically, the the transmission rule of thumb usually is the lowest theoretical limit, the lowest you can go on your transport latency is about 3 or 4 times the round trip latency of the network. You know, cellular modems, when they're behaving properly, are probably at 50, 60 milliseconds in one direction. So we would guesstimate about 100 milliseconds. So you'd multiply that by 100 milliseconds by 3 or 4. 300 milliseconds under the right conditions is certainly theoretically possible by common transmission standards. The HE4000, as well as the portable, the Pro units, the HE4000 go up to 200 megabits per second. The smaller units can go up to 20 megabits per second. The UHD is 422 10-bit, which is part of the high quality. It's not 420. It's not 8-bit. The color depth, the video quality, the bits are there to give you a superior picture. And I touched on this before. So how is this Genlock maintained? This IEEE 1588, or what is better known as precision timing protocol. Basically, timing signals are sent through the network so that all the appliances in the AVIWEST ecosystem are all locked to the same frame reference. What helps on some of the transmitters is they have a GPS receiver. What's the world's most accurate clock? A lot of times we synchronize our master control clock to GPS. That's the frame reference. So if we're trying to lock to the studio, the transmitters a lot of times are pretty close, either through the timestamp from the cellular network, or even better from the GPS network. So we're not completely in left field when a transmitter lights up and tries to talk to the stream hub receiver and master control. The timing is probably pretty close, but then we get it down to be frame accurate, lip sync accurate across that network. Here's a little breakdown of the, of course, guys, I mean, if I'm going a little fast, I'll give you a copy of, I'll email everyone a copy of the PowerPoint when we're done. So you have, here's a typical transmitter. This could be the HE, the rack mount unit. It could be the portable unit, the small air unit, the laptop, whatever. But basically here's the hierarchy. So the most important thing is the control channel. If we lose control, the mechanism's going to fall apart. So that's the most important. We want to make sure those packets get through. So so the decoder can talk to the encoder. So that's at the top of the stack. Then you see also here, actually above the control is the ARQ. Those are the packets that get lost. So the video. So those two are kind of at the top. Then some other data payload buffering, removing files or other statistics being moved through. Then audio, the audio ARQ. If audio packets get dropped. Oh, I'm sorry. The top is the ARQ for the control channel. So the control channel's at the top. If some packet gets lost, the unit will recover those first, just to show the priority of that. Then we get into audio, and there's the ARQ for that, along with audio buffering, and then there's the video. Actually, video is last. Surprise! I think any of you guys out there that are audio guys, you will know. Audio guys know this, that the human ear is far less forgiving to flaws or pops or clicks or drop packets. The human eye, visually, we extrapolate a lot. There's a lot of integration going on. Our brain can't process all the pixels we see in our environment. So we interpret things or anticipate things, and I think there's a lot of neural science behind this. So I'm not surprised that video is actually last and audio is second to the control channel, because I think audio is one of those things there. It's like we don't notice it until something goes wrong, or until there's a pop or a bad or a click. But audio is an important element. In theatrical movies, the sometimes the score, says more than the visual. Something spooky is about to happen from the soundtrack. So that's kind of the logic behind this. And then all that is load balanced, and the packets are scheduled. Which packets go out first, and how do we synchronize those packets? And then you see network statistics. The decoder is telling the transmit mechanism which one of these channels is behaving properly. A lot of times people think, with communications, particularly cellular, it's a question of bandwidth as the problem. Usually the first problem is latency. On the dashboard in our units, you'll see a modem jump up to 3,000 milliseconds and then settle back down. Sometimes there's these fluctuations. So latency is usually the first parameter, or the first problem area. Then, of course, bandwidth. I mean, if the pipe has gone away, then latency kind of becomes irrelevant if you lose the connection. But the unit is doing a delicate dance across all these connections, and it really doesn't care if the connections are modems or satellite or just any form of IP or Wi-Fi. It all seamlessly manages all this. Then here's how the transport stream is made up. It's a real-time protocol. A UDP stream wrapped in RTP. So the stream hub receiver acts as the master clock. This gets in a little bit of the precision timing protocol. One device on the network decides it's going to be the master. Usually in the case of AVIWEST, it will be one of the stream hub receivers in your master control. If a stream hub should be disconnected from the network for some reason, a second unit will say, "Whoa, where'd the master clock go? I don't see anyone out there." It'll poll the network. Where's the master clock? If nobody answers, it says, "Hey guys, if it's okay, I'm going to be the clock now," and it takes over. So the stream hub, it kind of dovetails into what I said earlier, how the stream hub controls everything. It also acts as the grandmaster clock for the precision timing protocol. So as I said earlier, it's RTP over UDP. That's the stream payload, and in that payload is the audio, the video, the data, and the control. Then the RTP, which is the whole envelope, the whole transport stream, that gets encapsulated in this proprietary safe streams. So the video, the audio, the data gets packetized as a UDP stream, which then gets put into an RTP transport, which then gets put into another encapsulation of safe stream. So it's like UDP inside of RTP inside of safe streams. This is what makes it so bulletproof to go through unmanaged networks or cellular networks or the public internet or satellite or whatever. And it's the forward error correction and the ARQ, or the automatic re-requests across these 12 IP connections. That's where the magic all happens. So that's it, guys. I know I went over an hour there. Hopefully you guys found this informative. If you guys have, let me. How do I get to my? If you guys have any questions, let me stop the PowerPoint. I wanna put something up for you guys. I have some links here. If you guys want to, we see a big part of our business as consulting. And if you guys have an active project, of course, bonded cellular, encoding, but we do an enterprise IPTV system with digital signage, fiber optics. I'm sure you guys are familiar with our website. The link I just sent to you guys takes you to my bio page on the VidOvation website. On the right-hand side is a mechanism to book a meeting with me if you guys have a project that you want to discuss, or if you have any deep questions about what we discussed today. I don't see any questions coming up. If you guys, of course, everyone who attended, or actually everyone who registered, will get a copy of the PowerPoint. And if you guys have any questions or comments, certainly reply back. Here's another link. If you guys want to demo or learn more about the AVIWEST ecosystem, at this link you can make a request for a demo. No pressure. I'm not making this a sale. I'm a firm believer of marketing through education. So hopefully you guys found this session today educational. If there's any questions, I can stay on the line for a few more minutes here. I guess that's it, guys. Yeah, if you guys think of something in the future, certainly reach out to me. Our sales team, my colleague Rick Anderson, our VP of Sales, he's very knowledgeable. You can call the sales department if you need pricing information, but certainly feel free to reach out to me for more of the technical questions, and I would love to do a 30-minute engineering consultation if you'd like. So thank you all very much, and thank you for tuning in today, and I hope you all have a great weekend, and let me know what you thought of the presentation today. I appreciate your feedback. Thank you all so much, and have a great day and great weekend. Bye-bye.